get started here this evening, most of us are aware that John Momberg passed away a week ago Friday, and he was a council member for a long period of time, about 16 years on council. So I'd like to begin the meeting after the Pledge of Allegiance with a moment of silence. So please remain standing for a moment of silence following the pledge and in honor of John. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ziegler,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Beagle,
Here.
Councilmember Gatchel,
Here.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Here.
Councilmember Leader is excused, Councilmember Resnick,
Here.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions? We've got a couple of additions to the agenda that were brought forward. The first one is well, we should probably call new business number 8. That's a request for authorization to submit a letter of support to the for Michigan Senate Bill 364. We'll explain that as we go forward. And the other would be new business number 9, which is a request for authorization to dedicate the future Michigan Airline Trailhead at Gunnar-Metella Park in honor and the memory of John Momberg. So please add that to your list. First on the agenda is a presentation by the 52nd 1 District Court judges, and presenting today we have present Judge David Law and Travis Reeds, Judge Travis Reeds. So please come on up and join on in.
You want to put everybody to sleep at the start, huh? Good evening.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Ziegler and council members for inviting us here tonight. On behalf of Judge Law and myself and Judge Bondi, who wanted to be here but unfortunately had another commitment, so you won't get to hear his jokes tonight. We wanted to take this opportunity to come back. We were here about 2 years ago with a community update, trying to let everyone know what we're doing at the court, some of the things that we have tried to bring to the court to assist the community in not only having access to their community court, but to provide the best service that we can. And we wanted to come today to let you know about some innovations and some changes that we made even since that last visit, to keep you up to date and to, again, let the community know that we're out there, we're working, and we're trying always, every day, to make things better. Not only do we appreciate your invitation, but we appreciate Director of Public Safety Moore's involvement. He's a great community partner, and we enjoy very much working with his officers who keep this community safe every single day. So what do? That's a big start. A big part of what we do is often lost on regular people because they don't come to court. So what we do at the 52nd District Court is basically everything. We do criminal cases, from driving on a suspended license ticket to murder one. We start them all, and while many of the felonies go up to the circuit court, all of the misdemeanors, for the most part, stay right at the 52-1, and we handle them from start to finish. We also do a great deal of civil cases, and again, the range of the types of cases we do is very broad. Everything from landlord-tenant disputes to small claims cases, collection cases, contract disputes, pretty much everything under the civil umbrella we handle at the 52nd District Court.
Answer that real quick.
Sure.
Just regarding criminal cases, when Judge Reed touched on a case going up to circuit court, but we handle many of the misdemeanors all the way through at district court level, what he means by that, circuit court has jurisdiction over felony cases, the more serious cases. So there may be a serious case, like an armed robbery or something that comes through our court, every case starts in the district court, in the location where it happened, but eventually, if enough evidence is shown, it gets shipped by us up to the circuit court in Pontiac to get handled through trial and sentencing and everything else from that. Civil-wise, we handle civil cases, lawsuits for money, up to the value of $25,000. Above that, again, those type of matters get filed up at the circuit court in Pontiac, so we get to avoid those.
Thank you. That's an important point. While the circuit court handles some of the cases that may have a higher dollar amount or have a more serious potential penalty, we handle a higher volume of cases. And the district court in Novi is one of the busiest courts in the state, actually. With 3 judges, we handle about 55,000 cases between the 3 of us per year. So it's a high volume court, and it's really the court that most people think of as their community court. That's the place where most people would go to pay a parking ticket or have a speeding ticket resolved or something of that nature. So we try to, as much as we can, make sure that there's access to the courts and that people feel comfortable. It's not always fun. Well, it's rarely fun going to court, I should say. But we try to make that experience as bearable for people as possible, let them handle their business, and so they can move on about their lives after they're done. In order to do that, we have basically 4 divisions. So we have 67 employees, I believe, currently at the court. And that's a pretty high number. It's one of the highest numbers of employees for a district court in Oakland County. I think it actually is the biggest. Maybe the state. We have 4 divisions. The criminal division obviously processes all of the paperwork. Everything from when the case starts, after we get it from law enforcement, from Director Moore's office and his officers, to cases from the prosecutor's office, which is where the felonies come from. And that division is very efficient. They work really hard to get everything processed, and they're very, very organized. Again, we have a high volume, we need good people, and we think that we have a great team at the court in the criminal division. We have a civil division. They handle everything from the landlord-tenant cases to the small things. They process everything, they schedule everything. They make sure all the litigants know when they have to come to court, and that all of the procedural aspects of the civil cases, which are way more complex in a lot of ways than criminal cases, are handled properly. Then we have our traffic division, which is probably the biggest division actually at the court. The traffic tickets are so voluminous, given I-96 and the other major thoroughfares that come through Wixom and Novi and the other communities that we serve, that traffic tickets are a big part of what we do. And a big part of that 55,000 is cases that the traffic division handles. And then we have a probation department. So when we deal with our criminal cases, we have to do something with these people. And we don't, and Judge Law is going to talk more about this, but sending a person to jail is rarely the right answer in a misdemeanor case, only when it's truly justified. We have to have something else to do with them. Our probation department, we rely on them to help us investigate claims, to interview people so they can tell us more about their background and their education, their criminal record, other things that we need to weigh when we're balancing what their punishment should be. And we have one of the biggest probation departments in the county as well, because we're very thorough about that. So briefly, before I get to Judge Law, let me give you a couple of new statistics. Let me start by saying Wixom's a very safe community, and that's in large part due to Director Moore. Drunk driving cases are down 27% year over year from 2017 to 2018. Non-traffic misdemeanors are down 5%. Civil infractions are up, and traffic misdemeanors are up, like driving on a suspended ticket.
Civil infractions, speeding tickets, things like that.
Right. The biggest jump of all, and frankly, I'm not even exactly sure, I'm gonna have to talk to Director Moore afterwards, the biggest jump of all is parking tickets, which went up 253%. So I don't know if there's some new rules and regs in the city of Wixom, but law enforcement is really on it. So those are just some statistics that we thought you might find interesting, and I'll turn it over to Judge Long.
All right, well, first off, I also appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, so thank you very much. Judge Reeds had touched on the different divisions of our court. So the Novi District Court, the local district court, is 52nd First District Court. So it's first division. The 52nd District Court is really large, and it covers almost half of Oakland County. The first division, stationed in Novi, that's where we're at. The jurisdictions we cover include Wixom and Walled Lake, Novi, South Lyon, Lyon Township, Commerce Township, Milford, Highland, Wolverine Lake. I think I pretty much covered everything. That's the jurisdiction that we at the 52nd First cover. There's also a branch in Clarkston covering the communities out that way, as well as Troy and as well as Rochester covering those communities out that way. So we're all connected. We're all one court with different divisions. And Judge Reeds had touched on the different types of cases that we do and what we do with them. The big, like Judge Reeds had touched on, sentencing. I get asked quite often, okay, what do you do as a judge? How do you determine a sentence when somebody comes before you? So the process on a criminal case, typically somebody would come in for an arraignment. That's where they learn the charges being brought against them. There may be a pretrial held down the road where they determine with the help of their attorney if they want to plead guilty to the charge or have a trial. We would go forward, eventually have a trial, bench trial in front of the judge, or a jury trial. And then if that person ends up getting convicted, there would be a sentencing date in the future. The information, obviously more information is better, right? So we get information about defendants in front of us typically through interviews with the probation department. So if a defendant enters a plea of guilty or it gets convicted at a trial, I typically would refer them to the probation department for an interview. Probation department will drop a report for me or for us that tells us everything about that defendant and probably more than we need to know, including their favorite color, favorite food. It's basically in there. But family history, whether there's an issue with alcohol, speeding tickets, criminal history, it's all in there. We know everything about them, which helps us, though, as judges, determine where do I go with a sentence. If somebody has an alcohol issue and it shows through their prior history and the crime that took place and in the report, obviously I'm going to address that issue with counseling and other testing and other things along those lines. Quite frankly, if it's somebody who made a one-time poor choice and stole a pack of gum for one reason or another, I'm going to handle that a heck of a lot differently than I would a drunk driving matter or a domestic violence matter. So that report really guides us in where we go. Not everybody ends up at the end, and this is something I want to get across as well, not everybody ends up with a criminal conviction necessarily if they come in on a criminal case. Many times somebody who's younger, under the age of 25, it's their first offense, there's an opportunity if they complete probation successfully to have that conviction not remain on their record. Same thing with a domestic violence issue. Somebody doesn't have any prior history of that. They complete probation, do all the counseling, every single hoop they jump through like they should. There's an opportunity at the judge's discretion to have that taken off the record as well. Drug cases, usually, well, back when marijuana was illegal, there's a statute regarding drug cases as well where you can have that conviction not remain on your record. And we use those to the best of our ability as judges because we don't want to have a one-time poor choice by somebody haunt them the rest of their life if we can avoid that. There are times that it doesn't work out. There's times where somebody has 2 or 3 different convictions. That's a totally different ballgame, and we handle those quite differently. But first offense, we're more than willing to look at those programs to try and help somebody. Before I forget, Judge Reeds touched on Director Moore. I want to thank the officers as well on behalf of the 52nd First District Court. Your officers really do. They work hard and do a tremendous job. We work every day. I mainly work, too, with your city attorney, Chuck Snell, does the city prosecution work there. He does a great job. He was in front of me today. I wanted to mention him, that you have a winner there with him as well. So we really do try to tailor sentences to fit the crime and the person before us. Another important aspect of being a judge, we feel, is community outreach. So not just meetings like this and going around the community introducing ourselves to people, but also being out there. We do a lot of court in schools. Judge Reeds and I did a recent one at Geisler Middle School. Judge Reeds has been in Walled Lake Central, a couple other different high schools, as have I, over the last year, trying to get in front of students to show them. And we hand-pick cases to go in front of the students, obviously, cases that involve defendants maybe that are younger or that have got caught up in an issue that young people would be facing today, have to make a choice about. We'll bring those types of cases in and actually run a pretrial, may do a sentencing, a wide variety of cases for them to see, hey, I'll have a choice to make in the future and I can see what the ramifications of my choice could be. So we find that to be fun and I would like to think successful. We're part of the Lakes Area Youth Assistance, Novi Youth Assistance. There's group panels that we take part of And through those organizations, talking to younger people about what they'll be looking at, or what we as judges see, the cases that we see come across our desks that involve young people, and hopefully try and help guide them a little bit, or at least get them to think, okay, I know this doesn't feel right, I got to take a second and make a good decision here before I jump into this, and because I know I could end up in that courtroom, and I don't want to see that short, gray-haired guy again.
I'm the tall gray hair.
Yeah. Teen court. We also are participating in the teen court program, so youngsters that maybe pick up a typical case would be a retail fraud at a Target or something along those lines. They come into court and they run a mini trial where there's teen attorneys, teen jury, and the jury makes a decision, okay, here's your punishment. You may have to do a letter of apology to Target. You may have to do X amount of community service. Generally, it's chores around the home with parents, whatever it may be. Show you've learned your lesson. That's another diversion where that conviction hopefully won't end up on that person's record either. So community involvement for all three of the judges is important as well. Last thing I guess I really wanted to touch on is it's your court. We enjoy our jobs. We try and make it as less painful as possible. But we do get people that come in quite often that aren't supposed to be there on a case, but come in just to watch. So I want to throw that opportunity out to anybody that may be watching or here tonight. If you have any interest in what's going on up at your local courthouse, come on in and see us, and we'd love to have you, okay?
So just a couple of quick things. We wanted to, or at least I'd like to mention, and I know Judge Law, since he and I work closely on these cases together, we wanted to mention again some of the specialty court programs that we do at the court and some of the innovations we've done with those programs. The specialty court programs, of which we have 4 in Novi, are programs that are designed to target the issues that a certain small percentage of the people we see have in order to try to prevent recidivism. In other words, one of the biggest things you can have when you're talking about community safety is people who tend to commit the same crime over and over again. That cycle can be broken, but it's very difficult to do that, and we try to provide tools to people to get their lives under control. We work together on, again, these 4 programs. We have a sobriety court program, which is a special program targeted at drunk driving cases and preventing drunk driving in the future with multiple recidivist offenders. We have a special drug court program that is targeted at giving people that have opiate addictions and other serious drug addictions the tools that they need. And believe it or not, they're quite different. The things that help people get control of their lives if they have an addiction, let's say to Vicodin, is that those tools are far different than someone who's got an addiction problem with alcohol. Even though they're both drugs and affect people's mind and can lead to criminal behavior, the tools that they need to change that behavior are much different. We also have what's called a community advocacy court. And basically what that is a mental health court. A lot of the people that we see come to the court and they have underlying issues of mental health concerns that they're just unaddressed. And that leads them to break society's rules, break the law, and then they end up in front of us. And so this community advocacy court is targeted at helping special probation terms for those people. And then finally, we have a veterans treatment court. And some of these programs, and particularly the veterans treatment court, we've made some innovations. We have some new programs under the law that have never been there before. One of which is we can provide these veterans who have served their country and have given so much, and as Judge Law likes to say, have brought things home with them that they never intended to bring home, that oftentimes will lead them to us. We have given them an opportunity to get their criminal record clear. And so that's a new thing that we've tried to do for our vets. So when they come to us, we can actually not only help them get their lives under control, but we can help them get their record cleaned up and avoid some of the lasting repercussions. So that's all I had to say. And again, I joined Judge Law. You're welcome to come in. We'll keep a pot of coffee on, and we'll give you the nickel tour.
I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything for us.
Yeah, I was kind of curious with respect to the civil division. Are you still utilizing the Oakland Mediation Service to come in to help to mediate some of your cases? I know that was...
We use them, but I don't think they come to us anymore. I think we send people to them.
Oh, okay, so you don't use the facility there?
To their office, we send people to them.
We'll send people to Oakland Mediation and/or case evaluation up at the offices there at the Bar Association. That's typically where we'll send people now. They're usually not doing it in our courthouse.
Okay,
But we do use them.
thanks, I was curious about that.
And it's very successful in resolving cases.
Yeah, I know I mediated a few cases over there. It was fun, but I haven't done it in quite a while, but I was,
Well, we'd love to bring you in.
over.
Yeah, we'll put you to work.
yeah, they're fun. They're fun for the mediator, and I don't know if it's fun for the parties. Anybody?
All right, again, thank you very much.
Mr. Smiley has a question.
Judge Reed, Judge Law, first of all, thanks for coming in. It's always nice to hear from you gentlemen. And Judge Law, you always have a special spot for me. You swore me in 3 years ago, so that was great.
That long ago?
Yeah, a little more than that, actually, yeah. But anyway, just a quick, you had mentioned our drunk driving is down 27%, that's great. You also mentioned, the marijuana laws have changed. If you have a number, that's great, but just your sense of, are you seeing that's a bigger issue with opioids and, to more specifically, marijuana use coming through with cases?
I think we're seeing more driving offenses starting to come in under the influence of drugs.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was.
Obviously, the possession cases have dropped off precipitously because unless you're under 21, there really isn't such a thing anymore.
Right.
So I know that many of the jurisdictions, I'm sure Director Moore would say the same with Wixom, that there's been a significant drop in just possession cases for marijuana. But we're starting to see quite a bit of it in the driving cases. And we're also seeing, I'm seeing at least, and I don't know if Judge Law can concur on this, but I'm seeing a lot of cocaine and marijuana combinations now.
Oh.
People are testing positive for marijuana. They're adamant that they don't use cocaine, and yet the tests are coming back. And we're trying to figure out whether or not these dealers are lacing the marijuana with cocaine or how it's coming about. But it's very common now. At least I'm seeing it weekly.
I would say we need a little more time to really see how things are being affected by the new
Sure.
law. I agree with Judge Reeds. I'm pretty sure I am seeing an increase in driving under the influence of drugs or with a drug in your system. How much and what the percentage is increase, I can't give you that right now, but there's definitely an increase. Obviously, we're not seeing any of the possession, just flat out possession of marijuana cases anymore.
Sure. Okay, yeah, that's, I just wanted to, your sense of things, and I appreciate your time.
We're still trying to get a feel for it.
Makes sense,
Still pretty
yeah.
new.
Thank you again.
All right.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming out. Feel free to stick around if you like, but you don't have to.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first is a special city council meeting of May 28th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Support.
Have a motion and support. Any discussion, any corrections, points that want to be brought up? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Next is the regular city council meeting of May 28th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Any changes, corrections, additions, deletions? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Correspondence, there was one email from the Honorable Richard Ziegler regarding the resignation from the Wage and Salary Committee. First call to the public. I'll read the rules for public speaking. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Anyone wishing to address the council this evening on any agenda items, please step forward. Seeing no one step forward, I will close the first call to the public. Next item on the agenda is the city manager's reports. We have two reports. The first is the fire monthly report of April 2019. Anybody have any questions, comments, points they want to bring up about that report? The second report is the police monthly report of April 2019. Anyone? Nobody has any questions about those? Oh,
Is there a parking ticket in that? I'm trying to find that out.
Mr. Smiley has a question.
Just mostly kidding around, that 250% increase in parking tickets that Judge Reed was mentioning. I'm just wondering, do we have any understanding where it came from?
You're going to see that there's not going to be a separate row for that. That's going to fall under other traffic complaints.
Other? Okay.
Other traffic complaints, yes. And I was also surprised by that number, that increase of 253%. I'd be curious to know what the time frame was, and also what the starting number was and what it went up to. My best guess, without having any data in front of me, is that can be attributed to the snow enforcement that we did over the winter. We hit the traffic control order very hard over the winter, rather, 2 inches or more of snow on a public roadway. We wrote a lot of tickets over the winter.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't
So,
necessarily just a couple, and that went from 0 to making it look like a giant number. It could have been quite a handful of them.
That's my guess, yes.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Unfinished business, there is none, which takes us to new business. Okay, first item under new business is the consideration of confirmation of the mayoral appointments and reappointments. This evening, I'm recommending the reappointment of Kay Ash for a 5-year term ending June 30th, 2024. Downtown Development Authority, the reappointment of Kristen Resnick for a 4-year term ending June 30th, 2023. Appointment of Kim Tile for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. The reappointment of Mary Kraus for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. Reappointment of John O'Brien for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. And the reappointment of Jeff Winters for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. The Planning Commission, reappointment of Anthony Lawrence for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. The Senior Citizen Commission, reappointment of Larry Grant for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. Reappointment of Joan Roberts, it's Joanne. I talked to her, I thought it was Joan all these years, and it turns out it's Joanne Roberts. For a 3-year term ending on June 30th, 2022. And reappointment of Connie Salvati for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. Wage and Salary Committee, the appointment of Tia Grunland Fox to that committee. The Zoning Board of Appeals, appointment of Ray Thorsell for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022. Appointment of Peter Behrman as an alternate for a term ending on June 30th, 2021. Reappointment of David Berry for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022, and the reappointment of Tom Marcucci for a 3-year appointment ending on June 30th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Mr. Resnick?
Mr. Mayor, if council so wishes, I could abstain from voting since one of the candidates for reappointment is my daughter-in-law, Kristen Resnick, to DDA. So.
I don't think that you need to.
Okay.
Anybody else have any? We have a motion, and I'm not going to read them again. And a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is anybody here that received? Come on up, and I should have done that before I voted.
Thanks for that.
Come on up and introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kim Tile. I will be joining the Parks and Recreation Commission. I've been living in Wixom for about 6 years, and my husband and I both work in Novi. We have a 10-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, so we are very familiar with the sidewalks in the community. So I'm really excited to be a part of the group.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on. I thought you were busy tonight. I just had something.
The rotary was changed to an...
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you came up. Thanks. It was nice talking to you on the phone.
Yeah.
Mr. Resnick.
Yeah, Kim, I noticed in your background brief, it said you have experience with fundraising with major donors.
So I work at Ascension Providence,
Okay.
Providence Park, and I fundraise for oncology, senior services, women and children. We're putting a new wellness center in. So I work with large donors in the community to bring funds in.
One suggestion maybe for the future is our Wixom Community Foundation needs someone to be talking people out of their money. So
I'm good at it, yeah, so I could learn a little bit more. I'm happy to be a part of it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I take the opportunity to thank everybody that's volunteered to serve and be reappointed. Next item on the agenda is a request for the City Council resolution recommending the Michigan Liquor Control Commission the issuance of a special liquor license through application from the City of Wixom Downtown Development Authority for the block party located on Pontiac Trail between Wixom Road and Old Wixom Road on September the 7th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is recommendation to approve 2 agreements for prisoner lodging for 3 years each with the Village of Wolverine Lake and the City of Walled Lake, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreements on behalf of the city. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Discussion? Mr. Gashel.
Thank you. I did have a few questions because I noticed the dollar amount is going up. And it was kind of vague in saying that we still believe this is a good use of our resources or time. I mean, do we check with other communities that lodge prisoners for their surrounding communities? Are we kind of in line with the charges on that front?
In all honesty, I did not check with other communities. When we took a look at this to determine what we were going to charge, we factored in what our personnel salary increases have been over the years. My 2 predecessors had not passed on an increase to either of these communities in a number of years. So in 2019, I've actually passed on, if it's approved, I've passed on a 12% increase, which made me a little unpopular with the other chiefs. But as I explained to them, it had been a number of years since they had had an increase. So what we have here is an increase of 12% in year 1, and then 2.5%, and then 2.5% in years 2 and 3 respectively.
Okay.
So I believe after taking a look at what our personnel costs are, I believe that this is in line with where we should be.
Does it still cover like meals and anything else that goes into lodging prisoners as well?
Yes, it does cover the meals, the beverages, as well as our personnel costs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Gronlund-Fox.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So my question is kind of along those same lines, but it's more targeted towards staff time. And that would go for the next item as well. How much staff time is involved?
When another agency brings a prisoner over, it requires a minimum of 1 police officer and 1 service aide to be back there with the lodging agency. The service aide is there for the purpose of completing any documents, assisting with collecting any property that the prisoner might have, and then turning it back over to the lodging agency. The officer's there for the purpose of conducting any searches and simply being present while the lodging agency might have to use our data master breathalyzer machine, or our live scan fingerprinting machine, or our mugshot module. To lodge a prisoner, it takes approximately 45 minutes to an hour. So for the officer and the service aide both have to be back there for the duration. And then, of course, when we have the prisoners here, the service aide is required to monitor the prisoners. They're here anyways, conducting other duties, but when a prisoner's in a cell, the service aide has to be more diligent about doing the half-hour checks, making sure they're frequently watching the video monitors at the front desk.
And then I know I'm jumping ahead, but what about the next item as far as time-wise?
For the records management?
Yes.
With that, you're going to see that's going to be dependent upon subpoenas, because we do assist with subpoena service. Because we're the 24-hour facility and the other two are not, our service aides are going to be responsible for warrant confirmations that come through the lien terminal, say at 3 o'clock in the morning, after hours when their facility is closed. I would say on any given day, we probably, between the service aides and the public safety records manager, we probably spend perhaps anywhere from 1 to 2 hours a day engaging in records management services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? We have a motion and a second to approve 2 agreements for prisoner lodging for 3 years each with the Village of Wolverine Lake and the City of Walled Lake, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreements on behalf of the city. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a recommendation to approve an agreement for police records management for 3 years with the Village of Wolverine Lake, and to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Mr. Resnick?
Just on the 19488 with year 1, is that also an increase from the prior agreement, which remained unchanged, if I remember, for 3 years or something, right?
Yes, that's also 12%, and then 2.5%. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Gatchell?
Just kind of curious as well, is there a point, I know it's 1 or 2 hours a day, but is there a point where our staff can be using the time for Wixom more appropriately rather than doing records management for other cities? Is this a net positive, not just in money, but in terms of using our resources effectively?
In the interest of collaboration, I see this as a good thing. We're embracing our law enforcement partners. I don't see the public safety records manager or the service aides as having their Wixom duties suffer as a result of engaging in this service for another community.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, as I recall, when we got involved in this, we had, back about 15, 16 years ago, we decided to keep the police department open around the clock. For a long time, we didn't have that.
Right.
The police were out on the field, but we didn't have a station that was open. And we made the decision that we would keep it open around the clock, and that we would staff it with service aides, and we wanted the service aides to have something to do. And in the meantime, the economies were such that we decided, how can we collaborate with other communities, and how can we benefit by that kind of collaboration? And one of the ways that we did it was to go out and attract those, instead of us paying money to Novi or to Oakland County to house prisoners, people were coming to us then, and the same thing with the records. I remember specifically having discussions at various budget meetings that we had over the years And we at that time felt that it was the appropriate use of it. You know, I know that they're always busy, but I know that there's time for them to do all those duties that we had, that we took on. And so I certainly think that it's beneficial. I think it's beneficial. It was back then when we talked about it, they decided to go in that direction, and I certainly still think it's beneficial and helpful.
And to Mr. Gottschall's point, many of the records management services can be conducted in the middle of the night when, as you can imagine, the service aides aren't quite as busy as the day shift service aides. They can engage in that preparation of subpoenas and some of the other records management functions. They can take care of that on the night shift.
Anybody else? Any comments? We have a motion and a second to approve an agreement for police records management for 3 years with the Village of Wolverine Lake and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thanks, Ron. Next on the agenda is recommendation to award the West Road Improvement Design and Construction Engineering to city engineering firm of Hubble, Roth & Clark, Inc., in the amount of $69,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support?
Want to put anything on the record here, Mr. City Manager? Or just a little explanation.
So we are looking for engineering assistance for the repairs that we plan to make on West Road. There are some panels and curb and gutter that need replacement. Overall, the road is fairly good. It's all concrete, and we want to maintain it as a concrete road for a while. So we expect that these repairs, which will need to be engineered, will prolong the life of this for several years. So we think it's putting our money to good use here in this particular one, and there are other roads that we plan to do this year, but this is the first one that we would like to move forward on.
Good. Anybody? Yes, Ms. Grumman.
This project was budgeted, correct?
This project was part of the budget stabilization and budgeted through that. Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Resnick.
One maintenance question, Tim. On the, I know on the asphalt sections of Powder and Maple and Charms,
Yes.
we do a lot of crack fill and with that butyl material that expands and contracts. I noticed that the West Road joints, expansion joints, are really where all the cracking and crumbling have occurred in a lot of those slabs. Is there anything that we put any synthetic material in there to help?
We have not put that on West Road. It was an aesthetics thing early on, and we saw some failures. So once it gets up, beyond the inch, it's kind of tough to use that way. We tried it actually on Charms. When it went too wide, we lose it, and then it just peels up in the wintertime. We are utilizing some crack seal in Century Industrial this year.
On concrete?
On concrete. And they were smaller joints, and we're hoping that this will prolong that area as well. So we've done that the last 3 years actually in Century and Oakland Oaks to preserve those areas. And actually next council meeting we plan to we had asked for a grant through Oakland County for local roads, and that will be included in that grant funding that we were getting there. So, yeah, that's part of the fixes.
Thank you.
Mr. Gottschall.
Thank you. I guess just a point of clarification, because I think you had mentioned this was coming out of budget stabilization. This isn't the work that was passed originally, right, with the Avanti Drive and all of those?
No, nope. This is a separate project. The one that was part of the 2018 was east of Beck Road, and this is all points from Beck Road to Wixom Road that we're going to be repairing at this time. So it's we did receive a grant through MDOT to do a full replacement of the road towards the railroad tracks from Beck.
No, there was a separate use of budget stabilization funds that covered like Avanti Drive, and we had a few of
Yes.
the property owners here.
Yep.
And council at that time pulled money out of budget stabilization, separate from
This is
the other West
This is a
Road.
separate one.
Okay.
Yes. This one we actually did with this year's budget for
Okay.
2018,
So
2019.
not coming out of budget stabilization?
It is, there is a portion that's coming out of budget stabilization for that, but this $69 or $69,000 is part of our engineering expenses that are part of the local road fund at this time. The rest of the $661,000 will be coming out of budget stabilization.
Okay, and what do we have, do you know what we have in the local road fund right now?
In the local road fund, I'm looking over for Marilyn, she's not here, but the local road fund, we have roughly 700,000 in it. And, you know, we're pulling out of that for these funds, and, yeah.
But then we're going to be using the budget stabilization for the actual road construction?
There are multiple road construction projects that are part of this next year's budget. And one of them was this, and then the other one is Beck Road, north of Pontiac Trail. And I believe there's a portion that'll be the following year for West Maple as well.
And so all that's coming out of budget stabilization?
There's a portion we get several $100,000 through the state, and so we're combining that money in our road fund.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody? We have a motion and a second to award the West Road Improvement Design and Construction Engineering to the city engineering firm of Hubble, Roth & Clark, Inc., and in the amount of $69,000. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Mayor Ziegler.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Beagle.
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchel.
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Resnick.
Yes?
Councilmember Smiley.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, Tim. Let's see. Next item on the agenda is recommendation to approve an easement agreement for Theodore Road with International Transmission Company of Novi, Michigan for $19,500 and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the easement documents on behalf of the city along with the approval of the required budget amendment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Discussion? Anybody? Mr. Beagle?
Thanks. On the first item here, or first paragraph, it says your request on behalf of the city of Wixom to build blah blah, and then it says Lot 10, Commerce Township.
So
Is why would that be in there? Shouldn't just say all just Wixom?
it's the southwest section, that's the way the township ranges work. It's still part of a.
But is this development in Commerce Township?
It is part of the platted portion, it's part of Wixom, but when you look at Commerce Township, it was section 32, and that's the way they wrote it in. I can,
It's
just part of the description of.
It just looks you know, if you're just looking at this, it looks like
it's-
we're paying an easement for Commerce Township.
Good point,
And,
but it is not it is in the city of Wixom.
okay, very good, thank you.
Ms. Grenlund Fox?
So I'm a little confused, and maybe it's just me, but, so it says on here that it does require a budget amendment, but yet it talks about that the project cost, or the projected cost, was fully funded through the developer.
Right.
So can you explain this to me a little
Sure.
bit?
So what happened was we received $20,000 from the developer of Milana Estates, and with that money, we had intended to use it for this. It was put in as a miscellaneous expense initially, and now we're bringing it into our local roads so that we can pay it out of local roads, because it is a local road expense.
So it's merely just a transfer?
It's just a
from
transfer.
one fund to another? Okay, thank
So
you.
we did receive that money from Milan Estates and also a portion from Cambridge.
So there's
That money will be coming, or that is already funded.
so it's really a zero cost?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the point number 5 says ITC shall not be responsible for damage to the road by passage of emergency and maintenance vehicles as well as heavy equipment which may include a 120-ton crane. So the city's going to be liable for that once the road passes on to our local maintained roads, correct?
It is.
Engineering-wise, are we taking extra care to make sure that if ITC has to bring such a piece of equipment in, that it can handle that weight?
This is, yes, yes. And the way I also was considering that tonight again, and if you look at, we're able to drive through there, and they are able to utilize that. It's a remote possibility that we would have to repair something, but that doesn't include any of the other roads that it would take to get there either. So.
Right, right. I'm just thinking, let's say they have tracks on this thing that's ripping up pavement and easement and curbs. Yes. We're going to be saddled with the repair of it, correct?
We would be. We are also, as they drive Belconi, they're utilizing a crane system there as well. And the way they put the pads out and everything, I don't see that will have that much damage, if at all.
I would just think that we should be consulted if something very odd does get moved on the site.
If they do, they would still have to have a road right-of-way permit to get there and to do that. So
all right.
I believe that would be covered.
Thank you.
Mr. Goshel.
Thank you. Is this going to be a service road or like a daily use road?
It is intended as a daily use road, but we don't have anything on the other end of it yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know that other parcels for sale now, but is this, so what was it, 2 years ago, we had the great land swap debacle? Is that what this is intended to further, or is this so fire can get access? Because we like having 2 access points into a neighborhood.
It is intended to have the second access point moving through there towards Gunner. Yes. Okay. At this point, it's a dead end road.
So then there's no plans anywhere in the city right now about land swap or the park or
not that I'm aware of.
Like that?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Sure, Mr. Smiley.
Thank you. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
Kind of following up with Councilman Resnick, you started to say this, it sounded like you were about to say that if they were to damage this road with a giant crane, that we would be liable for it. They'd be damaging other roads to get that crane, that they would be liable. So it's their best interest not break any roads on the way to fixing something with a giant crane.
This portion, especially through there, they do have to utilize the crane as they set it up.
Yeah, sure.
To, that's a 75 tower.
And that's where
they could potentially.
A little more wear and tear than just driving it, getting it there.
The other aspect is that I believe it's 100 feet from any of the towers. So we're spanned underneath. We're not spanned next to either tower. So we're driving through the middle of it. It's a remote possibility is what
there is some risk though.
There is, but
it's reasonable.
It's reasonable.
I can buy that. Thanks.
What else? We have a motion and a second to approve an easement agreement for Theodore Road with International Transmission Company of Novi, Michigan for $19,500 and to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the easement documents on behalf of the city along with the approval of the required budget amendment. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Next item on the agenda is a request for authorization to participate in the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Bid Contract for the acquisition of playground equipment from Miracle Recreation of Holly, Michigan, in the amount of $100,087. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
You want to give us a little rundown?
Sure. As most of you are aware, that this project has been in process for a long time, since 2005, and we're very proud and a good partnership with OTC Fundraising. They have fundraised $87,000 for the project, and they have been in cooperation with the Parks and Rec to choose the equipment, the design, and et cetera. And the playground design is designed for ages 7 to 12 as well as 2 to 5. There's a section for that. So we're excited to do a community build, and we'll be looking for a lot of volunteers.
Great. Anybody? Mr.
I
Resnick?
want to thank Bill Dungan and OSTC for 14 years of hard work in raising this money, and thank you, Deanna, for hanging in there. And that's a long time in the making. It'd be great to see it realized.
It's a good project.
Mr. Smiley?
Thank you. Hi, Deanna. Yeah, I do want to thank them for, for doing this. The equipment, desperately needs, some refreshment. I've taken my kids up there many times. I'm sorry they're too old now for, for this, but maybe not the youngest one. But I wanted to ask you, how did this get started? I mean, this is wonderful. I'm just wondering, how did this happen? I know 2005 I wasn't here, and I'm just curious how wonderful things like this start.
It started with Bill Dungan, and he wanted a project for his students, and the students chose the project of a playground. And so that's how it all started. The first year, maybe $5,000 was donated. They would do a golf outing, and each year they would donate different amounts. And their goal was $100,000, and they wanted the project to be done at Gilbert Willis. So students back in 2005 determined the project.
Remind us a little bit about Mr. Dungan, please.
Mr. Dungan is an instructor at Oakland Technical Campus, and he was also on the Parks and Rec Commission.
And the only reason he got off, I think, is because he moved from town to another locale. Right.
All right, it's wonderful.
Ms. Grunland-Fox?
Hi.
So do you already have a sign-up sheet for the volunteers, or when would you anticipate that being put out?
All of our promotion is already, we already have posters out, and anybody that wants to volunteer can just call our office, because we're organizing with some of the businesses too that want to do community service.
Do you have any yet? A number?
We have a couple
Okay.
businesses.
All right, nice job. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we've got a motion and a second to authorize the participation of the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Bid Contract for the acquisition of playground equipment from Miracle Recreation of Holly, Michigan, in the amount of $100,087. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, Deanna. Next item on the agenda is a request for authorization to submit a letter of support for Michigan Senate Bill 364, which would create a local grade separation grant program to facilitate the separation of motor vehicle and railroad traffic in Michigan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
I know that you were chomping at the bit to address this, Mr. Brown, so...
Absolutely, sir.
Please.
So the background on this is we have this Michigan Senate bill by virtue of some action that was precipitated over the last several weeks, I would say. We're concerned about rail crossings in the city of Wixom. It has impact on the quality of life around here. It creates noise, it creates traffic issues. And we had a sort of an equilibrium with CSX, the rail line operator and owner in the past. There was what issues there were had been worked out, and people knew what the schedules were and those sort of things. Recently, the Lake State Railway Company, as I refer to them, LSRC, they leased the lines formerly owned and operated by CSX from Flint to Plymouth, and they retained ownership at CSX, but LSRC is operating the trains and doing the work, if you will, on those lines, including in the areas of Wixom. Because of that, things have been changing. There's been difference in patterns. I think that traffic is increasing in some ways, and I believe that it is their intent to further increase that traffic in the long run because they want to make greater use of the rail lines that are available in those areas that they're leasing from CSX. So that's a concern for us. And I was contacted by State Senator Jim Runstad, who had a gentleman by the name of John Kuhl, who's the director of the Michigan Railroads Association, in his office, and they were discussing the possibility of seeing a grade separation accomplished perhaps in the city of Wixom at Beck Road because of the anticipation of this increased traffic flow. And they had been working with the state legislature to try to make the case for why that would be an important move and an appropriate move and an important and appropriate expenditure of funding. So they had told me that this was in the offing potentially and had inquired about our interest in it. As you know, we have a task force that we set up for the Beck Road widening that is also a primary goal of the city. And currently Beck Road's 3 lanes. We're looking at ways to widen that road to 5 lanes. And that's because it's a major north-south corridor. It's one of the few major north-south corridors in the area, and it's very busy traffic-wise, especially at rush hour points in time. So that's something that we've been working on for years. We just recently established a task force to address that. They've been meeting for about a year, trying to find resources to facilitate that widening project. And initially, it was a $75 million project, which included a rail overpass or underpass or a grade separation. When you excluded that piece, it's about a $30 million project, right? And we had the old equilibrium that we had with CSX, and perhaps that extra $45 million was maybe not money that was going to be available, and we were looking at alternatives. Then I was contacted by these gentlemen that were working on this and got excited about the prospect that maybe we could have an additional funding source that would make that possible, because if we are going to widen Beck Road, if you have a bunch of train traffic, it doesn't matter if it's wide or not, if it's getting blocked up by train traffic on a regular basis, it's not going to improve the traffic flow to the extent that it would if there was a grade separation where the train was riding above the road or below the road and not impacting that traffic flow of motor vehicles. So we were told that there might be some action on it from the legislature at the state level. There was, this past Wednesday, just in time to be too late for the agenda, there was a passage, or an introduction, I should say, of a bill that is going to appear before the appropriate committee at the state level. We expect that there might be a hearing on that within the next week to 2 weeks. And initially, I didn't think that we would have the opportunity to do a letter of support. Then I talked myself into the fact that we needed to have council action on the letter of support. So I put this letter together late in the day today and had provided it to council just before the meeting. So I apologize for the late submission of the package. The package has my council report, which talks about much of the things that I've talked about already. And it talks about the fact that I think it's appropriate for us to support this bill because it would really provide us with a great opportunity to potentially have a funding source. And potentially is the operative word. Senate Bill 0364 does not provide funding. It just, quote unquote, sets up the program so that if funding is appropriated at a later point in time, there will be a spot for that funding and an opportunity for the state to administer a grant program that we could then apply to for grade separation at Beck Road, which could facilitate our goals in that area. One of the things, 2 of the things that I put in here, I wanted to be careful to mention to council is that I would not be in favor of an overpass or an underpass on a 3-lane Beck Road, or accommodating only a 3-lane Beck Road, because that would basically eventually result in that possibility of widening Beck Road not becoming possible anymore if there's a $40+ million investment in a rail overpass or underpass that doesn't accommodate a 5-lane road. So we've had discussions with those same players that I would be in favor of that, but we would have to have the assurance that we would have an overpass or an underpass that would be done to either be done in conjunction with a 5-lane widening of Beck Road or be done in a way that would accommodate a later widening of Beck Road to 5 lanes. So that's been something I've been articulating all along. The other thing to keep in mind is the way the bill reads currently. It requires a 20% non-state match. That could be local money, such as from the city of Wixom. That could be private donors. That could be from a developer that might have an interest in widening Beck Road that would also kick in funds to support that. That could also reflect federal funding. And we've looked at federal funding sources. There are some possibilities there as well that we've looked at for our Beck Road widening project that we would like to see happen one day. And we would need to commit that we would be willing to look at those alternative sources to facilitate coming up perhaps with local money, perhaps with federal money, perhaps private money, perhaps a combination of all three, that would allow us to get a $40+ million project done for a substantially lower cost for the city of Wixom, but we may be called upon to participate in that in the end, and that's something to be aware of if we do lend our support to the Senate bill. So the request before you to support the drafted letter that I provided for you. If you do approve it at tonight's meeting, I'd appreciate it if you could stick around and sign the original for me tonight, and I'll be able to at least get 6 of our 7 council members signed on the document if we do approve it. And I also have provided the Senate bill in its current form, and I emphasize the current form because it's just the introduction of the bill. Things could change on the language front, but it's very simple the way that it reads right now. It just essentially establishes the program. It talks about the fact there might be a 20% match, and there's not much else in there as it stands. So it's an early discussion point for the committee to ultimately take a look at. As you'll note on the letter, the committee that's involved is the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure that would review it at the state level in the Senate. So that's my background. If there's any other questions on it, I'd be happy to fill in any blanks I missed.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Granlund Fox?
So if we approve this tonight, that doesn't commit Wixom to any monies at this point, correct?
Correct. The only reason I included that is because I think it's important to at least demonstrate that we do understand that that's something that would be possible down the line if we were to make an application and ultimately be awarded money. I don't want to give them the impression that we don't understand that there could be that obligation in the long run, but it does not commit us to anything tonight. Yep.
Anybody else? We have a motion and a second to authorize to submit a letter of support to the Michigan Senate for Michigan Senate Bill 364, which would create a local grade separation grant program to facilitate separation of motor vehicle and railroad traffic in Michigan. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And let's remember to all stick around and sign this before we leave.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9 under new business is request for authorization to dedicate the future Michigan Airline Trail trailhead at Gunnar Metella Park in honor and memory of John Momberg. As is normal, we have an administrative summary, but I want to. This is, I think, very impressive. Let me just, if you bear with me, I'd like to read the whole thing into the record. John Momberg passed away on May 31st, 2019 at the age of 80. His life is to be celebrated on Monday, June 17th, 2019 at St. Mary Our Lady of the Snows Catholic Church in Milford at 10:30 a.m. and friends may visit the church beginning at 10 a.m. John was a long-time public servant to Wixom, having served in the following capacities over his distinguished career. Parks and Recreation Commissioner from 1975 through 1984, including 1980 through 1984 as the commission-appointed volunteer Parks and Recreation Director. He was a city councilman from 1986 to 2001. He was appointed deputy mayor in 1988, 93, 94, 96, 98, and 2000. Additional service on the following committees: Wage and Salary Committee, Michigan Sesquicentennial Committee, Noise Abatement Ordinance Study Committee, the Community Endowment Committee, Tax Abatement Review Board, Internal Roads and Main Arteries Committee, Land Acquisition Committee, Historical Preservation Committee, and the Facilities Study Committee. In light of John Momberg's dedication to the city, I recommend the City Council honor his outstanding service and his memory by dedicating the trailhead at Gunnar Metella Park in his name. The trailhead will be added as a new amenity in conjunction with the opening of the improved Michigan Airline Trail that runs through Gunter-Metella Park. The plans for the trail that include 4-person shelter, benches, trash cans, and a bike repair station, and a water fountain for the trail for park users. Given Gunter-Metella Park's establishment during John's service to the Wixom, this dedication would be a wonderful and appropriate recognition of John Momberg. And I would appreciate serious consideration of this. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Discussion. Mr. Resnick.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. You know, one thing from a historical perspective, a lot of people may not know about John, but the Community Endowment Committee was actually the precursor to the Wixom Community Foundation. John had, he epitomized community giving and giving of oneself. And he had set aside monies so that one day, should we create a 501c3, that it would be the seed money for that program. And that money did get put aside. And I know in John's heart, there'd be no greater honor than this for him, because he was so long in Parks and Rec Commission and served as the director for that. So I think that a park in his honor is just a wonderful thing. He was also the inspiration for myself setting up the Resnick Scholarship within the foundation when I first got elected to council. And he was also a great mentor to me in my early years as Parks and Rec chairman, and my early years on council as well. I called Renee Sines, the executive director of the foundation, this afternoon, had a good long conversation with him and went over the history of all this. And Renee gave his support for bringing up at the Wixom Community Foundation Committee an agenda item to consider taking what's called the General Undesignated Endowment Fund, which was actually originally the J. Momberg Endowment Fund, and putting some money towards this trailhead as well. He will put it on the agenda, and then the Community Foundation will vote on it, so the Grants Committee or whoever votes on that. So very much in support of this. I think there'd be no greater honor for John's legacy than to do this. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, I agree. I've known John. I knew John for a long time. He lived in the neighborhood I moved into 45 years ago when I moved to Wixom, and he was a great neighbor, very good neighbor. And John got involved with the city back in the 70s and worked through the 80s, John, actually, I think I'm the only one up here that got a chance to serve with John. My first couple of years on council were John's last couple of years on council, and John, he was a model council member. We all look over our materials. We're all prepared when we come to these meetings. But John really looked over the materials. He was really into each and every issue. John read every word of every sentence of every paragraph of every report, and he was always prepared. And as Mr. Resnick indicates, he was a model council member, and he was one of my role models. As well. I really appreciated my time serving with him. A good guy, and one thing I think that I think you touched on, Mr. Resnick, with John, and I don't know, maybe he wouldn't want me to say this, but I know that we don't make a great deal. We make by charter we make $1,500 a year being council members, and John served 16 years, and John gave back all that money back to the city, and ending up in the Wixom Foundation now. I think that's where it's now housed. But that's quite a bit of money to give, and he gave himself and his time, and I think it really is his family will be pleased, I'm sure, with this, because it is John Momberg. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is second call of the public I've already read the rules for public speaking, so if anybody'd like to come up to council this evening, and the reason for this is for anything that's on your mind within reason, that come on up and address council and tell us what you think, or what you like, or what you don't like, or seeing no one jump up, I'll close the second call to the public. Next item on the agenda is city manager's comments. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of things. Father's Day coming up this Sunday, June 16th. I want to wish happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and hope they have a great day and enjoy it. The Michigan Airline Trail paving process does continue. The installation of base material has started in Wixom at the west border of the trail at Wixom Road. We're excited to see that happen, and I still believe we're on track for completion to take place late summer, early fall of this year, which is outstanding. Far and away much earlier than I thought it was going to be on this process and this project. So very excited about that. Congratulations to Meghna Chakraborty of our GIS function. She's the student that comes from Michigan State University and performs our GIS services for us. She was awarded the Helene M. Overly Graduate Scholarship from the Women's Transportation Seminar for the second year in a row. So we wanted to say congratulations to Meghna for that accomplishment. She's a PhD student at MSU in civil engineering, specializing in transportation safety, so congratulations to her. A lot of our staff work with her on a very regular basis, obtaining very important information that we get through that service that's provided through Michigan State University and through Meghna. So congratulations to her. And lastly, just an add-on to it, I'd like to just pick up on something that Councilman Resnick just talked about, and say it's great to hear that the Wixom Community Foundation is going to take a look at possibly supporting the trailhead dedication to Mr. Momberg. That's fantastic, and we appreciate that consideration, and congratulations to Mr. Momberg's family for the recognition of his dedication and his service through the years to Wixom. Well-deserved and a great idea from you, Mayor. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah, and just on that, I also wanted, I just this morning approached Deanna about getting something prepared for this, and I know that you worked real hard to get all that done, and Steve, you did too. I appreciate all your work and getting that all ready.
Well deserved.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Next item on the agenda are the city council comments. Mr. Beagle.
Thank you. Thoughts and prayers go out to the Momberg family, and also to Jody Gallo for the passing of her mother-in-law. Thank you to everybody who was appointed or reappointed to our volunteer various committees. We really appreciate that. And last but not least, school is out on Thursday. When we're driving through the subdivisions, let's be careful, slow down a little bit. When kids are playing in the yard, stuff like that, the ball goes out in the yard, they don't look to see, they just want to get after the ball, and hopefully we slow down, and let's try to go through this summer without a tragedy. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gossel.
Just like to share my thoughts as well with the Momberg family and Jody Gallo and her family as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grenlund Fox.
I would just like to say thank you and congratulations to all those that were appointed to the various boards and commissions, as well as the condolences to the families that were mentioned.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got kind of all the same things, but I want to say them anyway. So my condolences to the Momberg family. I think it was a great idea, and this trailhead tribute is perfect, and I'm glad somebody thought of that. Jody Gallo, one of our very own, lost her mother-in-law. My thoughts are with her and her family. I also want to say, the kids are out this week, so be careful. And I do have one different thing. Just 2 Sundays ago, all of our high school seniors graduated. I want to wish them luck, and they got an exciting time ahead of them, and it's here for them. And then finally, yes, thank you to all those appointments and reappointments by the mayor today. It's wonderful having lots of talent helping our city and contributing in all those different ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also like to offer my condolences to the Momberg family and the Gallo families on their losses. Rich, we're going to miss you on wage and salary.
Thank you.
A lot of people don't know Rich's day job. He does a lot of mediation, and I have served with him on wage and salary for 9.5 years, and his expertise and his calming ways have been quite an asset. Tia, welcome aboard. Hopefully you'll fill some big shoes there with that. I know you have some labor negotiation skills, so that'll be most welcome. Also, thank you to all our appointees, but I also want to thank you, a special thank you to Russell Meredith, who's out in the audience there, and Michael Monahan, 2 residents that didn't lose faith in a particular item that they had been working on for the last couple of years in the city, and that's the idea of a columbarium in the cemetery with the assistance of Edward Lynch from Lynch & Sons. He made a wonderful presentation at the last cemetery committee meeting, and it seems like it was favorably received. So thank you, Meredith, and Mike Monahan as well as residents for just keep pushing that something you believe in. So also, again, Bill Dungan and OSTC, thank you so much for having your marketing students raise all that money. $87,000 is a lot of money to raise for a playground, so that they did a great job, and 14 years in the making, so good job. Other than that, keep safe.
Thank you. I would also like to extend my condolences to Jody Gallo's mother-in-law, Patricia Clark, passing, and of course, John Momberg's family. Just a couple of things. We kicked off the concert series here, and I wanted to, and also the picnic that we had for the employees and the volunteers, and both. It was a beautiful night. It was pretty well attended, and Mike was thrown in my face, and I started thanking people, but I know that I neglected to thank Community Services for putting that picnic on, and I wanted to make sure that I wanted to extend our thanks to you guys for putting on Parks and Recs and everybody that was involved, the DPW for cleaning up, and everybody for helping. It was really great to see everybody working together, and I really appreciate it. I guess I would remind when we adjourn, everybody stick around to sign that document. But the one thing, I guess, I would say that with John's passing, I guess I've been thinking about it, and I've talked several times with Ms. Resnick about the Wixom Foundation, and I know that the Wixom Foundation and the city has had a little bit of a falling out in recent years, and I guess I've kind of characterized it as last August we went through a divorce, and we had passed motions and pretty much parted ways with from my perspective, and I think that's what the record reflects, is that we didn't want to be involved with them anymore. But I guess, with John's passing, it kind of brings to mind, especially with the discussions we've had, maybe we ought to take a second look at that relationship, because especially if they're going to be involved with us to help out with things like this Parks and Recs contributions, like we hope they will. Maybe we need to get a counselor or something and go through some therapy and try to reestablish that relationship, so that we have some communication that goes back and forth. I don't know if anybody else is of that opinion, but I think I've come to the conclusion that that would be a good thing to do. But anybody want to chime in on that or talk about that?
I think as well, but we should heed the advice that was given to us back in 2008 of keeping it as a separate citizen-run and, you know, not elected official-run organization, and not city managers
Right.
and administrative people being on those boards, so.
Right. Okay, having said all that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Go home. Except you guys.
Yes.